And if I could ask Eben to talk a little bit about not only this course, but the vision that it is developing globally. Thanks, Eben.
Well, thank you, Alejandro. And I really want to just acknowledge kind of the incredible work of Alejandro's team and all of the faculty who have been involved in this course. It's really exciting, but it's a lot of work. And I just wanted to recognize that because I think it really has huge potential to scale the impact and scale the kind of learning and training that we're all doing and reach lots more people. And I think that's at the heart of what we're trying to do here. So let me also begin just with a request that if you know anybody at any other institution who would like to join this course, this particular course, the social entrepreneurship course, next fall, we do have slots available and we have funding to support paying the co-instructors who are participating. So we're looking for a few more schools to participate, and I'm glad to speak with anyone about that. They don't have to be within the OSIN network. And so we would love to learn about opportunities. So the context for this, this particular course is a vision of scale. And that is what we've been exploring over the last couple of years. Online learning took off, I don't know, 10 years ago with the concept of a MOOC, a massive open online course. There are now lots of MOOCs out there, but they really have the disadvantage of essentially being one-way delivery mechanisms supported by, you know, quizzes. And so they're not particularly, I mean, they have their role, but they really are not the kind of education that entrepreneurship in particular demands. And so what we have been working to create here is a high touch MOOC, if you will, right? It's a course that has the ability to scale in the way a MOOC does, but also ensures that students have access to faculty in small groups to be able to actually work together and test and develop their projects. It's all enabled by RebelBase, the software that sort of brings all this together. And we believe this is a very powerful innovation that has the potential to reach hundreds of schools and tens of thousands of students around the world. And that's at the heart of what we're trying to do. We're embedding this particular course, social entrepreneurship, in a 3-course certificate sequence. It's a global certificate in social enterprise and leading change that's offered through the Open Society University Network. Essentially what we've done is taken 3 courses from the BARD MBA in Sustainability program, the #1 green MBA in the country the last 2 years running. And we've been adapting them to this global classroom approach and this kind of platform. The 3 courses include a foundations course, indeed our MBA foundations course, suitably modified. It's called Sustainable Development and Social Enterprise. And this introduces students to the idea of enterprise solutions, both for-profit and nonprofit, to social and environmental challenges. Students are used to thinking about, you know, government solutions or philanthropic solutions or education solutions. They're not used to thinking about, well, you know, I care about water pollution or I care about gender equity. I could start an organization, I could start a company or a nonprofit to solve those problems. The second class is the social entrepreneurship class. And then the third course is a course in leading change for sustainability. And this focuses actually on driving change within existing organizations and stakeholder engagement in particular. If you're a student, often the kind of project you would do in this class would be a campus as a laboratory project, or if you were in an MBA program, it might be a project within your business. It's essentially a sustainable business minor, 3-course business minor for non-business majors. And our vision really is to create a low-cost, accessible certificate program that universities all across the world can plug into their existing curricula easily to support the scaling vision that we have in mind. So that's a little bit of the context. And again, just a huge thank you to all of the faculty and Alejandro's team, Eliza Edge and Tomas and others, for just inventing this thing, because no one else in the world is doing anything like this. And I think it really is the future of meaningful and effective education in this space.
Thank you so much, Eben. It's exciting for many of us, and we will speak to the excitement of what Eben has described today, but this is also addressing an urgent need. We have, for my 2 cents, we were talking about idioms at the beginning used around the world. So for my 2 cents in a US idiom means that if you want my own opinion, for my 2 cents, we are facing less than a decade's opportunity to radically change the way we equip students, faculty, people in general to see systems that are broken and launch ones that achieve sustainability, that provide access to education, care for the elderly, all of the things that our students identified in the practicum last fall and in the Entrepreneurship this course are identifying with partners in existing organizations so that they can gain practice launching solutions that can replace the way we do things today. Now, as urgent as that need is, this is something we really have been inventing together. Many of the folks around this table are co-creators of this. And the bigger call to action, from my point of view, is to take the excitement we were able to generate, where you watch a young person realize that the world is not a given that they need to plug into or scream loudly about, but the world is something that they have the opportunity to practice experiments in creating. Well, we ourselves are in an experiment together now, and I hope we use this discussion to talk about what we're inventing together and how we can achieve the vision Eben just enunciated for bringing this to folks all around the world that see a better way, can imagine one, and need practice making it real. On that note, I'd like to very briefly introduce the course, and Evelina van Mensel of AUBG is going to give a few examples for those who weren't involved in the fall practicum, just to give you a sense. Then we will go to 6 discussion questions, which I can promise you will be meaty. We might all start laughing and crying, but we will get, they'll be vegan too. Don't worry for those of you on plant-based diets. They will be a rich discussion. So let me take a moment and just introduce our focus on lessons learned. And the background here, I'm going to be very brief, is that we gave ourselves and students around the world a remote, interactive, project-based course offered jointly across our institutions. And when I say gave, I'm really using the wrong verb. We opened up an opportunity where really the course was created by the students. Dalia Najjar said in one of our faculty meetings in the fall, we mustn't forget that this is all about the projects the students are creating. Everything else we as faculty do is just enabling them to do that. So in addition to being interactive in a way that I, in a dozen years teaching all around the world, have never seen before. I've never seen, including over this pandemic, this kind of in-depth collaboration on what folks are creating together to meet needs. In addition to that, it's also, as I led off by saying, urgent. And if you'll permit me, I'm going to play a very brief video. Sebastian, I trust this was cleared with you. If not, I think your lawyers will be after the rest of us in a moment. I think that I'm going to not play the video right now because I think this is something that we can cut to later because I can't figure out how to use the play button. So that having been said, I want to promise you that there are great videos of Dr. Sebastian Cro talking about that need. And Sebastian, I don't want to put you on the spot in the middle of Ramadan or early in it in your time zone. But since the video isn't available, I want to make sure you have an opening to say a word or two about that great idea that you say, where if we can do it here, you can do it anywhere.
Thanks, Alejandro. I think we should just need to say goodbye to this idea or to this notion that innovation comes from a few places in the world, like the Silicon Valleys and whatnot. That in the spirit of true democratization, and I know we use this word quite inflationary, but the example here, and that's from the WEF article, I think it tells a little bit my perspective on that. If I ask people, you know, how many electric vehicles do you think there are in Bangladesh? And then they scramble a bit and then think, where is Bangladesh? What is Bangladesh? And then I say, okay, look, more than Tesla has sold cars globally to date. Or if I ask them, look, I'm from Germany, but what do you think? Where's the largest decentralized renewable energy program in the world? It's not in Germany. It's not in China. It's also in Bangladesh. So not praising Bangladesh, it's just an example that sometimes for innovation, I think we're missing out if we always look in for the usual suspects, and we need to open this up. And I think this course is an excellent opportunity. I have learned from the colleagues, from places, from ideas. And I think that's exactly the point. In order for this to work, in order to really move the needle, we need to democratize it, and we need to generate an army of social innovators. And that can be through entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship, as we already said it. But most importantly, that cannot be only driven by the US or Europe or whatnot. That needs to come from across. And hence the example of, if we can do it in Bangladesh, you can do it anywhere.
I know I don't often pause for several seconds during these presentations, but I just want to ask us to pause for a moment and think about what Sebastian has just said. And ask yourself, do you ever fall into the assumption that the people who are going to create the way we do things tomorrow are those usual suspects that Sebastian talked about, that they're in Silicon Valley or Berlin or somewhere where we expect the innovation to come from? Do you find yourself falling into that? Because what you say, Sebastian, that's so powerful for me, reminds me that it's only if we are enabling people who can imagine something different and who understand problems that you don't understand in Silicon Valley, that we can literally invent the world we need. So thank you for those words. Just a few more points to clue everyone in to what we're doing. These are real projects from the fall where our students told us, and this was throughout the world, as you can see, which problems, and these are just 6 examples, there were many more, they thought needed to be solved. And then they got to work on the hard part, which is creating solutions. And I always think how our job is partly inspirational, where we ask folks to imagine what could be, and then it's partly sort of this brutal reality check of trying to see what it would take to actually do it. But that the second part of it is often the most generative, and strangely enough, with the Open Society University Network's data, students become not less confident, but more as they take on those challenges and learn what it would take and how hard that is. So I'm not going to go into detail about these projects. This is just in case you're scanning, we did everything from addressing child abuse to opportunity for youth through tutoring to cleaning up beaches and so forth. And instead, what I'd like to do is turn this over to my esteemed colleague, Evelina van Mensel. And Evelina, I'm actually going to stop screen sharing so that you can take over for a few minutes. And I know you were going to talk about a few examples of this.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much, Alejandro. It's actually my pleasure to show one of my favorite key selling points of this course. It's the experiential learning platform that we're using and some actual projects from students of last semester. So what they actually look like. What is this RebelBase we're all talking about? What makes it so special? Well, first of all, what I think is, after working with RebelBase, and also for my students that I can speak for, I can hardly go back to the old style of teaching and learning, to be honest. So I'm now looking for many different ways to introduce RebelBase to my other courses as well. Because what we see here is an example, and I'm so glad Mirella is in the audience because she was part of this team. So I have here on the screen Granny's Delicacies, one of the teams that was formed last semester to solve the problem of the elderly. So without going into detail, I just wanted to give you an example of the team. So we had an exchange student from Germany who was at the university at this time. So they formed a team together. And I remember after the end of the semester, Pauline, going back to Germany, said, I so much want to start this project for real. So I will be looking for ways to continue working on this idea. And this was so powerful and important for me. But because of the resources that RebelBase provides to the students, and they're able to work online and remotely and whatever suits their needs, they were able to come up with this portfolio for the project, starting anywhere from identifying the problem to solving the problem and working on a financial model and margins every step of the way of an entrepreneur. But in addition, what would be the impact of their venture also? So the different modules, once completed by the teams, would result in this wonderful portfolio that everyone would have access to. And not only this, but every week they would be given a lot of feedback from different teams and different team members. So they would be given feedback not only from instructors, but also from the global classroom, everyone else in the classroom, which were more than 100 people from the various universities. And that feedback would usually
I think we might have lost your audio there for a second, Evelina. Is everyone else able to hear? You are able to hear.
I think we completely lost her. Yeah.
Mirella, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know she was talking about your project. Is there anything you would want to add from your own perspective as a social innovator?
Yeah, I was going to propose that I take over since her connection went out. From my perspective, more as a student, I wouldn't call myself a social innovator yet because I haven't been in a project that's already done. Let me share my screen because I have RebelBase here.
I'm back. Not sure where you lost me, but I see Mirella took over.
Yeah.
Should I continue or would you prefer continuing?
You should continue, Mirella. It's all yours. And I'm going to buy you a moment to share your screen by saying that, let me emphasize that this is not about the digital platform that we came together to create to make this possible. It's about the projects that get created on it. So who better to jump in at this point than you, Mirella? And let me add, I hope that let's replace everything that we as faculty have innovated with newer and better tools and platforms that students around the network create. So this is about continuing to innovate to make this possible. And I see you've shared your screen. So that's all I was talking for. All yours, Mirella.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to say that you mentioned something about platforms. At the same time that I was taking this course, I was a bit overkilling it because I was taking, I was part of another academy, which was precisely for social entrepreneurship. So I had two very different experiences because the academy didn't use this tool. And so having all these project builders, for example, and all the information on them was so good. Like, I personally recommended this platform to the organizers of the academy because we had a huge problem there with not having access to all the materials in one place. And having this here in a structured way with all kinds of guides, for example, here, the people that are gonna get access to all this information are really gonna see that it's super useful, especially having everything in one place is so good. And it really helps put everything into perspective, because even the moment that you see everything that is awaiting, you kind of start feeling the weight of actually creating a business, whether it be a social enterprise or not. And it really makes you consider whether you are cut out for this or not. So it sounds like an amazing thing to create social change through social enterprise or something. But when you really have to get down to it, and when you really have to complete one builder per week, that's when you really test yourself to see if you actually want to go into this field or not. I don't know if you guys want to ask me anything about the project, about Granny's Delicacies, or my experiences with this course as a student. Just let me know. I'm open to that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Miro. It's great to have you here. Thanks a lot. And thanks a lot for covering for me dropping off. Don't know to what extent you heard me, but Mirella's team is one example of more than 20 projects where students collaborate on the platform. And the beauty of that collaboration is also not only the team collaborating with each other, but also across geographies. So we had one team that worked, that had team members from Palestine, from Bulgaria, and from Lithuania. And it was a very diverse team. It was very challenging, of course, as you can imagine, but that's another set of skills that all the students learn throughout this course. And apart from all the feedback that they received from the various instructors that we have on the course, they also received feedback from all their classmates from the global room. And that's what makes this course unique, that we are able to connect across geographies and able to combine our superpowers. It's how we started as co-instructors in the beginning, getting ready for the course. We were identifying each other's superpowers and how we can complement each other. And this is so powerful because we have different powers to bring to the table, just as our students do. And then they're able to complement each other. And another wonderful part of the course is also the wealth of the instructors and how we learn from each other as well. So from every perspective, if you look at it as a student or as an instructor, there's so much to learn from your peers also. And also a lot of support coming from instructors. I know I would ask Dalia for help with the financial builder with my students, for example. And then other instructors would step into your room. They would help your students have a separate session with your students on topics where you don't feel so confident. And this is like invaluable to know you have someone you can count on. It's really awesome. Thank you,
Evelina.
So much.
I really love the way, so none of what just happened with Evelina and Mirella presenting as if they had prepared together had been planned before this session. And I actually think it's such a great example of the collaboration, both in each region, but also across regions, as Evelina has talked about, that we practice through this. There's a concept in improv, in theatrical improv, where if you work together to make up scenes, then you start to be able to create them together. If you've ever seen improv without missing a beat, just like Evelina started Mirella took over, I had no idea what either of them was going to present, but I thought it was a wonderful exposition. I'm just going to take one more moment to provide background. This is the format, and we're eager to improve on this. This is something that Tomas Mora and I and one or two others at RebelBase initially conceived as a way of bringing together the global and the local. But my request to everyone here is, let's do what we ask students. Let's think continuous improvement. Let us ask ourselves, how do we improve on this going into next fall and as we expand it globally in the way Eben talked about? So the format was global fishbowls, students do the builder. The builder that Mirella talked about is basically a project-based learning module where you're creating something. Maybe it's a prototype, maybe it's your theory of change, maybe it's a unit on your financials, the kind that apparently Dalia was helping everybody with, which is good to hear. Then they would, and this is the point I would emphasize here, they would publish it, they would workshop it locally, then publish it to the whole global group, all 8 regions from last year, and then revise it and iterate it so that we didn't fall in love with our first ideas. We were in love with the problems we wanted to solve and the people we wished to serve, to quote Lee Kim. And so in doing that, we would hear in project comments from people all around the world and then improve what we had done the last week. So that's really just for folks who joined who aren't familiar. And that's an example of the kind of feedback. Adam, I hope you were saying something great. It looks like you were sharing a BBC link because I didn't realize till now that you were on there. That's great. And that's exactly what happens is people challenge each other, but also share resources. So the last thing that I'm going to emphasize before opening it up is that Open Society University Network has measured the development of skills and mindset across the network. And we have a report coming out shortly, which is drawn on an analysis of anonymous interviews with students throughout the network, as well as ourselves as faculty. And it examines gains in critical thinking, especially in this, as combined with opportunity recognition, where we often think of critical thinking as what we do as close readers of texts. In this experience, we're thinking critical about the world around us. Let me say that again. In this experience, we're thinking critically about the world around us and combining that with seeking opportunities to do with what Sebastian talked about at the beginning, which is launch experiments ourselves to make change. The same is true, for example, for collaboration. And I won't go through all these bullets because I don't want to take the time, but where if you read a business press article, it's all about homogenous teams who are all aligned and thinking the same way. No, we were crossing functions, cultures, backgrounds, missions, and learning from each other about what we could create. And that, if I've learned anything, is how innovation occurs. So I'd love to go. I'm not going to take a lot of time with the metrics, but what students told us it does bear touching on, which is an 88% of students reported increases in confidence to launch something new. 81% talked about core concepts in entrepreneurship and launching a startup or a social initiative, and others had lower gains from calculating risk to gains in flexibility. And when I say continuous improvement, I'd love to build on that as we go forward. So I'm going to stop here because I'd love to open up to some questions for the group, which is what was promised. Now, this is Eben's email in case anyone wants to participate in this course. But the first 3 questions, and if I could challenge you, ask you all to go around and answer them, is how does the local interact with the global and the synchronous work with the digital project collaboration that Mirella and Avelina talked about? And why do we do this in a global format at all? So I'm going to open that up. And if I count to 5, I'll actually maybe pick on one of you guys if no one has jumped in.
I think it was great to see how many shared concerns the youth have of today. And it was great to see how there is some kind of synergy, the feedback they give to each other. They learn also to give feedback, to share their respective local resources, their particular context, conditions that I also as an instructor I was happy to learn a lot. So this global context helps us, students and instructors, to place all these problems we're interested in a global context. And that helps a lot when you address solutions.
Thank you, Natalia. Feel free to jump in. I think, Sebastian, you were about to.
Yes, just to share one more note on the flip side of what I said before. You know, I can't forget when one of the BRAC students called me after a class, and I think it was one of the first sessions they experienced internationally. And he said, "Sir, I can't believe it. I don't think you know that, but there are homeless people in New York." And this might sound strange to you, but for this BRAC student, the BRAC University, if you would use the elevator, you see a gigantic slum area where people live in 3 phases, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours in the same hut, so that it's becoming more affordable. And he said, "I did not know that this existed in New York." And when we went through those social issues, I didn't know we would, at the end of the day, basically work on the same problem. And I think that, and his excitement and his curiosity, I think that spoke volumes to how things suddenly made a whole different sense to him. And that's this kind of, democratized this thing that he had no clue about that. And it was just so eye-opening. It might sound weird to some of you, but it was for me quite an insight also how disconnected we are in this allegedly hyper-connected world.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll never forget when a team that had been started by some of your students, Dalia, talked about protecting women in particular from abuse. And then there was all around the room, there was, "Oh, we're struggling with that here. And here's what we're finding." And it's just a variant of what Sebastian said about, wait, there are homeless people in New York, that we're all facing many of the same problems. And it's not that we're looking for one solution. In fact, that's been tried too many times, one solution imposed by an NGO or a corporate. Instead, we're looking, what are you finding can be helpful where you are, that works well in your local soil? And then how can we learn from that in ours? I want to pause for another 5 seconds in case, I think Dalia might have been about to add something. Go ahead.
No, Alejandro, I was actually going to move to the next question about the outcomes, because just to add to what Sebastian said, one of the hardest thing was when I was writing the syllabus for this class is not like to write the objectives of this class. It was easy to write them, but the hardest part was, how should I measure the outcomes of this class? Because we're guiding students to make a change, but we all know that change does not happen in one semester. We can't fix broken systems in one semester. We enable the students to discover their powers and to be effective in the society, And one of the outcomes that I always thought that I would measure is after the course ends. I will watch the students, I will watch the teams after the course ends. Are they really going through what they started? Are they really still having this mentality of like, we want to change, we want to make a change, we want to fix those broken systems? And this is what actually makes me proud when I look back to the students after each semester. Like now we've had 2 semesters teaching the course, and I have so many students who they are still working on their projects, who they started another project. I have a student, a team that started their project 2 years ago, and now they have an actual venture called Clean Palco. And this is something that makes us co-instructors very proud, because we changed the mentality of those young entrepreneurs. We didn't just deliver a class for 1 semester. We also have a team that won a microgrant, the team Fight Against Femicide. They won a microgrant and they have a club now at AQB called Fight Against Femicide. They are spreading awareness about women's rights, women issues. We have a student who got accepted to the Get Engaged conference that's going to be participating in next July. We have a team in Vistapir who won the Disrupt to Sustain competition, and they are filming a documentary on their project next summer. So this is what makes us proud as co-instructors, just to see the change in the students themselves, wanting to make a change. And this is really hard, because we can always write objectives, and outcomes of the course, but how do you actually measure and witness those outcomes?
Dalia, as you speak, I think of the thing that keeps me teaching is the moment when a student has just created something and I'm like, you know what? No longer am I Yoda. That's the Jedi right there, if you will, right? And I feel that they have become the person that I'm listening to and taking notes based on what they've built. And I want to just, Natalia, I saw in the chat that you mentioned a couple of projects. Would love to hear about those where folks are continuing on them and raising grants.
Yes, that was also when I was thinking about the outcomes of this course, this topic that Dalia mentioned of sustainability of projects beyond the course and the semester itself, that for me is the main outcome. And two of our projects that were created with the help of this course are continuing, and students say, because they're graduating this year, they will continue working afterwards. One of them is they are developing the app and learning after they have created the prototype in the course. They're learning how to extend its functions. And another course is creating a book for visually impaired children. They have created this spring an improved prototype after the first prototype from the fall. And they have already given this improved prototype as a test to a school for blind children in Belarus. And they're planning to expand their project even more after they graduate. So this is the most exciting. And they also got a grant from OSUN to support this project. So these are the exciting outcomes, really.
As I listen, Dalia and Natalia, to these developments that have been continuing, I am noticing what you, Mirela, said in the chat about glamorized versions of countries and places in the world. And I'm having this sort of aha moment where I realize that the glamorization we do of societies, whether it's through Hollywood or through propaganda, is the opposite of design thinking, isn't it? It's the opposite of the power that you spoke about earlier, where we are challenging, and it was Evelina who said this, but we're challenging students not to pretend that there aren't problems, but to actually look at the way things really are and imagine if in the real world they could make them better. So that's very powerful to me as you were speaking, Natalia and Dalia, and then I saw your comment, Mirela. I'm curious, are you all finding that there are problems you might not have known about before you started the session that your students are raising to your minds?
I think my students saw quite different parts of the world and became aware of so many other problems that were not at the forefront for them, and it did expand their horizons. Yes, definitely.
Let's open up, because the question, and Natalia, that's very, very helpful to know. I think that the amazing part of this for me is finding out about the contours of both challenges we're facing and potential, because as we say in innovation, you can't solve a problem if you just understand it from a 1,000-foot view, right? And I think that we watched these teams exploring problems and obstacles to their initial solutions in order to develop solutions that could become real. I want to just open up on the outcomes question. And I put all the questions in the chat just so that I could see your faces on screen rather than the questions. Are there any outcomes that someone here wants to talk about that you're proud of or that you'd like to see us do much better on?
I don't know if I'm addressing the question directly, because I have a bunch of thoughts that have accumulated. But I'll try to frame it in that way in terms of outcomes.
More interested in what you would like to speak to.
Okay.
You govern.
Okay, now I forgot. So we talked earlier about innovations not necessarily coming from Silicon Valley and those usual places. And while I was listening to that, I thought about the flip side, which I think, Alejandro, you talk about in your TED Talk, of the distribution of opportunities. And I think maybe the reason why we see a lot of innovation coming out of Silicon Valley and stuff is because a lot of the opportunity for funding and stuff is it sticks together. Money flows like water, but it congeals like mercury. It just likes to stick to itself. So this model, I think, one of the outcomes that I'm hearing is that these small distributed projects that are coming from where the problem is are getting funded. And this network, distributes, sort of spreads out the opportunity. And while I was watching the projects emerge last summer, I noticed some patterns that were international. Like there was a theme of projects that addressed social fabric and the dissolving social fabric, and how our economies, our 20th century economies, like turn people into inputs, and that hurts the social fabric. And then some of these projects, one of the themes of projects that came in Palestine and in Bulgaria, Granny's delicacy, or the Palestinian kids students who wanted to provide memory assistance to the elderly. Those are social fabric questions. And then there were environmental questions. There were emerging tech solution questions. So there are various themes and similarities across cultures along those themes. And so I imagined, and I mentioned this to you, Alejandro, I imagined there are maybe opportunities for strategic partnerships between projects. So the collaborations, we had international collaborations on projects, but I started to imagine opportunities for collaborations between project teams and sort of synchronous or strategic partnerships. That's my thought.
Adam, you're making me think a lot about the ecosystem. When Elmira Bairasla, who's the head of the BARD International Affairs Program, wrote her book on entrepreneurship around the world, she said, actually, entrepreneurship has higher levels outside the big metropoles. This is not an exact quotation, but the ecosystem isn't there to get things off the ground. So I wanted to ask you all, in the spirit of continuous improvement, are there ways that we could connect, and Adam, you made me think about this, not just project to project, but even partners and resources in each of our locations and between locations. Now, at least one of you asked me when we were chatting before the call, is it appropriate to talk about the global accelerator vision that many of you have created? And that's appropriate, but also other ideas that many of you may have to make the ecosystem accessible to our students and their teams, as well as each other.
For me, what is very valuable is that we're working on the sustainability of this course. So how to look into the future. And there's a lot been done already, and there's a lot being done at the moment. So this is not yet another a long hackathon where you get a lot of ideas and then nothing comes out of them. But we're actually trying indeed to see how we can bring this further with the global accelerator that Alejandro is talking about. I think that will be something amazing for the students coming out of this course, and just joining an accelerated program where they can actually see their ideas and projects come to life, and where we would have in one place not only funding resources, but also mentoring, and we're going to be able to connect the teams and indeed expand their ideas, combine resources, because I really believe very much in collaboration and combined effort rather than spread effort all around. So if we're able to do that, that would be great. And that's already something that steps are being taken towards. And another thing is that this is a part of a big certificate program. So it's not only just this course, but it's part of it as something bigger than even gave the context in the beginning. So it's not just this one course we're taking, and we want to, it's the smallest thing to introduce our students to the concept of social entrepreneurship, because they do not necessarily know about it. I actually learned about it at university, so that's how I got to know. So this is one thing, but in the end, our ambitious goal is to actually see these projects come to life, and we're working towards that. We don't want to have yet another course where students join in just for the credit and nothing happens after that. So that's part of our ambitious strategy, which we're working on and which we're working towards together. Bringing this ecosystem together indeed on a global scale, which is very ambitious, but seeing how the class has evolved in just 2 semesters, I think it's also feasible.
It would be very exciting to hear more, since I know you were one of the instructors that participated in Leading Change or Entrepreneurship this spring, about that larger vision of discovering our powers, not only to start new things, but also to start new things within existing organizations. I want to note that I will be staying for at least another 15 minutes, partly because I'm so happy to see many of you, but also because these ideas are so dear, and these experiences to me. For folks who need to run right at the hour, I want to thank those of you who participated at the end of a long fast today, and just wish you Ramadan Mubarak. And for if I said that wrong, it's because I only know how to say it in Turkish. But I also want to say just thank you, everyone, for joining us. And then I'll be sticking around for a few more minutes if anyone else wants to chat. Just big kudos to all of you for creating something that's so more powerful than I could have imagined, and to Open Society University Network and EBIN and the BARD programs for having initiated this and turned it into something we could create together.
Thank you for everything. I'm gonna have to go unless someone has any questions they really want to ask me. But for the future participants in this program, I can leave some contacts of mine. Just
That'll be great. That'll be great.
What we didn't get to in our questions was what surprised you most. And I see Tomas doing something with a hand on screen. I think it might be a waving hand, right? I didn't even know you could do that with your hand on Zoom. I better be careful. I'll do all the wrong things. Yeah, exactly. Well, then thank you, everyone. It's such a pleasure. I can't wait to work with you all this fall. If you have questions, please do reach out to Mirella. And you see at the very beginning of the chat, EBIN, or actually in the slide, so I'll put it in the chat, EBIN left his email address if there is a program that's interested in taking part, or if you just know of people who might want to be part of this. But mostly, thank you. Great to see you all. And for those who want to stick around for a few minutes, I'd love to chat. Oh, hello, Leanne. You must have been below my screen. I will definitely share the slide link and would be happy to share the recording. We may have a young filmmaker who could cut it down a little bit so it's easier for others to watch. So if that's cool, we'll try to do that. Well, the official session is over. So good to see you all. And then for those who want to stick around, I'll be here for 15 minutes. There's such cool icons happening. I didn't even know about all this. Who's that? For those of you who want to stick around, what I would love to know in a smaller group is just anything that surprised you. Oh my goodness, we've got aliens and dancers.
Alejandro, I had a question.
Hey, Leanne, so good to see you. Is that
I
the
had
Hudson Valley behind you? I see Catskills. No?
No, it's actually Australia. It's my dairy farm in Australia.
What?
But I am here in America. But I had a question. Unfortunately I had another meeting this morning, so I dropped in and dropped out. I was wondering your in terms of the comparison of social entrepreneurship and collaborative entrepreneurship. And right now I'm working with an accelerator that's using a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, where they're trying to have voting amongst participants in an ecosystem. So it's an accelerator with its multiple startups, and that they're trying to create customer base where customers have voting, and you have this governance structure. That's a very, that's on one extreme, blockchain level. But even coming back to this whole idea of a collaborative entrepreneurship where the ecosystem is working together rather than on separate topics, separate projects. Where is your thinking there? Is it, how is that incorporated, and where is it going? Or
I love this question. Let me pause in case anyone wants to weigh in first on this. Collaborative entrepreneurship across the network. It's something many of you spoke about. And Leanne, I appreciate your asking, how can we use technology, if I'm hearing the question right, to expand the scale and scope of that and the power of it?
Because sorry, Leanne, since we're just only starting to work on the topic, it's not like we're gonna have ready answers right now, but I'm already thinking like we could match different projects on the platform, what Alejandro was saying, using the artificial intelligence, using the platform as much as we can. I'm sure these are things we can discuss as a team moving forward, how we can do that. But we first want to have the global accelerator way on the way, and then as a second step, maybe. But that's only me talking at the moment. So I think we're still in the very beginning.
The global accelerator that Evelina talked about, Leanne, is something that I think both can answer part of this question, but could benefit from your thinking. So it's a concept that it might have started with something Dahlia said, though there's a couple other people across in this group that were saying things that came together and challenged the rest of us to say, essentially, how can we do what you're talking about? How can we not just have the course? The course is crucial for all the reasons, and the sequence of courses, but then beyond the course, make sure that folks have access to each other. And I think in the beginning of that proposal, we used just as a little in-joke, the names from Casa de Papel, from the people in the heist, which are all global cities. And we say, what if, an innovator, an engineer in Nairobi could be working with a designer in Berlin and a marketer in Kaohsiung, and so forth, to develop their idea. So the short answer, and I'll share the proposal we developed together with you, is we've tried to come up with a bunch of new things, and I'll mention 3 or 4 of them. One is an idea that Sebastian has been very eloquent about, which is we have a model that worked in one place and an experience that went with it, right? Maybe it's developing a circular model for children's clothing so that you're not throwing it away. Maybe it's a model for making access to potable water, or for distributed solar, or for renewable agriculture, whatever it is. It's something that we made work. It wasn't a new idea, but we had an experience making it real. And we want to compare that point to point to get away from traditional scalability. And this draws on Professor Michael Schumann's idea of alternative scalability. So the first big idea there is, could we create a database of those models and those experiences, so our students are not only going through a set of guided steps with feedback in the way that some folks featured today, that Mirella and Evelina featured today, but they also are comparing notes and learning from each other all around the world. The second big idea is, can we involve the entire experience base beyond students as providers of expertise, as providers of resource, strategic firms and organizations and sources of capital, both within and across our regions. Let me stop there, just noting that a big issue we need to solve technologically there is the matching. But I also would love to learn more, and you've been kind enough to share with me some of the far-sighted ideas that I know you've been developing for this purpose.
Yeah, I could share with you what I've been working on, if that is, and I'm going to share with you a document, which is by a group called Sensorica. And Sensorica is it's a open source. It's the open source way of doing things. So it is not about creating projects for a profit in the normal sense, that you're creating a project that has property rights over it, but it's creating projects for the commons. So when you have a project in the commons, it's open source. It's all about keeping things open. Of course, you can have copyright components to it, but it's in the Creative Commons. And he builds the case in this presentation that I'm sharing. And he was one of the guys, when I was using RebelBase in my course, I invited him to come. He was just emphasizing how collaborative entrepreneurship is a very different beast from social entrepreneurship, and he goes through these steps. But more importantly, in terms of the technology, so he uses something called REA accounting. It's an ecosystem accounting process, and it's about contribution accounting. So that, and he has a TED talk, which is very inspiring. If you look up his name, about how do we record people's contributions to an open source commons project? How do people get rewarded for what they contribute to, which is not in an enclosure, which is normally how you get rewarded, because by enclosing the process, you capture the profits and you can now reward people's investment. But rather, it's about documenting participation and contribution all the way through the process, and have a way to pay that back. And we know there are ways to do that with blockchain. Not that it has to be on a blockchain, but there are, we see that now with the NFTs. Those NFTs get sold and the artists can now get paid royalties every time there's a transaction. So there's a way to keep paying back to that to the person who originally added something, and doesn't have to be captured and with profits now only for future use. So I've been working on accounting ecosystems, and we're looking at, because we're focused, and this is this group that we with Manfred Laubichler, and we want to work with RebelBase, but we're still at this early stage. We're looking at creating with accounting value flows which reciprocate for contribution, and anyone can contribute. Anyone can come in and join the ecosystem and contribute, and then it's because it's recorded, they can receive payment. And once you have that on a blockchain, you can have all things receiving payment. So you can have nature receiving payment. You can have trees can make payments or receive payments or whatever. So it changes it's sort of like the metaverse. You have a different layer.
Yeah. There are some trees near me that I need to let know that they may have to be involved in transactions. But seriously speaking, what's very inspiring to me about what you're saying, as you say, it can be blockchain, it might not, is just that you're willing to think beyond and ready to think beyond the canonical models, the paradigms that we assume. I gave a talk at Cornell for their intellectual property-a-thon last weekend, and no one mentioned open source. Maybe this is on me during the whole conference. Now, it was actually a great conference, very focused on how to help social innovators be the David, be the Sling, working against old tech, big tech firms to disrupt and displace them. That having been said, what I love about what you're doing, and my hope is that we do this throughout the network, is that you're asking the questions about models, and can we think in whole new ways about the incentives we create, the way we pay people, right? And the way we engage their talent and their energy and their passion in building a better world. I want to just for a second note that in the chat, Adam has mentioned that there is a student at Simon's Rock working on something related to that, and that a couple of people requested access to the document you shared, Leanne. It's totally cool. Thank you so much for sharing it. I wanted to say that with a minute to spare so that you could be aware of it. Thank you for staying, those of you. I do love this part where we get into questions such as you just raised, Leanne. I can't tell you how good it is to see all of you and meet those of you I don't know. If you have any questions, not just about what we are doing, but about what we can do together, you have Eben's email address in the chat, and I will include my own Calendly link there as well. Please don't spread this. Please don't post this broadly, just so that anyone who wants to have a follow-on conversation with me can do so easily. Calendly is, by the way, if you haven't followed Awetona, pretty great case study from an African entrepreneur. All right, on that note, great to see you all, sending lots of love, and thank you for engaging together as always and creating a finer future. Bye-bye.
Thank
you very
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Bye-bye.